Hey class, hi everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. My name is Jonathan once again, and I'm your teacher for this course. You are live right now on this Thursday afternoon slash evening. It is once again time for You Know It, PLAR History and Geography here at WASA. Not English, science, or math, but this is history and geography. One of the four components of PLAR that we offer here at WASA, but this is history and geography. It is Tuesday, shortly just after 4 p.m. local time, shortly after 5 p.m. on this Eastern time slot. It is Tuesday, February the 28th, the last day of the month. Look at that. The month just flew right by. Tomorrow will be March. Again, this is term 2A. We're entering week 4 of this term, of this 9-week term. So we're almost at that halfway point. We're almost done looking at history. And then probably around next week, I would say. Yeah, around next week we'll switch gears, we'll wrap things up, and then we'll start geography. So we'll wrap up lesson number 2 today, which means that we'll start lesson number 3 on Thursday, and then we'll finish that off by midweek of next week. We are 2 weeks away from March break, so again, really dialed in and focused in before that break that we have. So again, 2 weeks away from March break. So again, hopefully you can submit as much work as you can or finish any outstanding work that you have. Get them to me, I'll mark it, I'll give you feedback. And if you need to write the test, let me know and we can get that done for you as well. But again, we're 2 weeks away from March break and then we'll just continue along after that point. So again, if you have any exciting plans for March break, whether you're going to somewhere tropical like Dominican or Cuba or Mexico, or you're just staying in your community, or you're going to a city like Thunder Bay or Winnipeg, feel free to share along with the class so we know what you're up to during March break. Alright, so again, just a reminder, at any point, any time, you can call and interact with me or ask to get in touch with me with any questions you have by phone call, email, or by social media, Facebook. So again, if you need any help, let me know. I'm here. I know a lot of us are in the IL component, where we're independent learners, where we just sign up for a course and we take that work and we do it on our own, which is fantastic. And I know that some are even with the Smartboard widget as well, hence why we're offering live classes. So again, make sure you log on to Smart Widget right now. That way you can interact with me and the rest of our classmates and learn as we continue. Again, you can do that by simply calling in the WASA studio, by simply just listening, asking questions, or by participating. And again, if you missed any outstanding materials, you can always go back and review it. But again, all the materials are in your textbook and shouldn't be any difficulties as you navigate through your assignments. But if you do, again, just let me know. I'm here to help. More than happy to help. And it's what I'm here for. Last week, we talked about Canada and the Second World War. Today, we're going to look at what happened after the war, what transpired internationally, what took place here in Canada, and what emerged around the world. So we're kind of looking in at the 1950s, okay, a little bit about the 60s, but we'll save more about the 60s next class. But again, we're shifting gears a bit. We concluded World War II. Again, you missed that, again, go back, check that out, where we talked about and we discussed Canada's involvement and contribution during the Second World War. Today, we'll look about what happened afterwards. Okay, all that chaos and non-fun stuff happened. What happened afterwards? So we got a very short lesson for today. We'll then look at assignment number 6 in your workbook, which looks something like this. Okay, as you can see, it's only out of 9 marks. Very simple, very straightforward. I think just 3 or 4 questions. Again, let's take some time right now to quickly go over these questions. That way, as you listen and as you participate, you'll know what to answer for. So again, the first question deals with the Canadian Charter and the Bill of Rights. Simply, what was it and what was it designed to do? So again, please make note as we go through the Bill of Rights and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom. And then your next question talks about the main function of the UN. So what was the UN, who were the UN, and what were the main function? In other words, their goals, their purpose. Okay, these are very similar to all the questions that we did before, mainly looking about their goals, their objectives, and their purpose. Very straightforward, talking about the UN. Who were the UN, the United Nations? Question number 3 talks about NATO. Okay, what does NATO, NATO stand for, and what was its purpose? NATO is a group, it's an organization. What does NATO stand for, and what was the purpose of NATO? Again, a mark for stating what NATO stands for, and another mark for its purpose. Very, very straightforward. Next question, NORAD. What does NORAD stand for? NORAD. What does that stand for? And what was NORAD's purpose? What was it designed to do? Again, 2 marks for that question. And that's it. That's it. That's all assignment number 6 asks as we wrap up lesson number 2. So again, please make note, close attention to NORAD, NATO, United Nations, Bill of Rights, Charter of Rights and Freedom. Okay, assignment 6, 9 marks. Very, very straightforward. So let's begin today's class. Let's start up by looking at our learning goals and our success criteria, and then we'll lecture about some of these topics, and hopefully you'll gain some new knowledge, and hopefully you can use those knowledge to answer these questions as well. All right, learning goals. Same as before as last term that I have typed out before. Again, the learning goals are what we are learning, what you are learning, what I am learning. It's the direction where we are heading. Okay, so today we're looking at political changes in Canada and international defense organizations that emerged after World War II. Okay, let's try to tone that down a little bit so that's more simple terms. So we're looking at what political changes took place in Canada and defense organizations or groups of defense that happened after World War II. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, so we're looking at more of the political aspect of what emerged after the Second World War. Success criteria is something that you can reflect upon, something that you can check off to see if you have achieved your goals or your learning. So hopefully by the end of today's class, you can say, I can explain how the Bill of Rights and Charter of Rights and Freedom protect Canadians' human rights. And hopefully you can say, I can explain Canada's foreign policy relationship with the United States and around the world and assess their impact. So again, very straightforward. Looking at these terms, these definitions are all in your assignments in your workbook. Again, we're started on page 16 in your textbook. So you have that open up, lesson number 2 in your textbook. And as you scroll down and past all that fun knowledge about World War II, scroll down all the way down towards page 16. At the bottom of page 16, where it says after the war, that's where we are starting for today. Okay, so again, if you want to flip to that page, page 16, 17, you can highlight, make notes as you go along. But back to our lesson, I added a new slide for this term called From Wartime to Boom Times. Okay, so from war times to boom times. So after the war that ended in 1945, Canadians enjoyed unprecedented period of prosperity. Again, very similar to what took place in the 1920s. There were only about 1/3 of Canadians that were poor. Again, this was a great improvement from the 1920s and 1930s, where about 2/3 were in this poor class. But now it's only about 1/3. Again, industries were booming, demand for products, a lot of growth in constructions and jobs and other fields as well. So again, everyone came back to overseas. They were happy or excited. The war was over. It was good times again. So again, from war times to boom times. Again, this is not in your textbook. Okay, you can't be like, oh, Jonathan, where is this in the textbook? Well, it's not there. I just added this slide. This is just some additional facts and knowledge that I have integrated in our class time. So again, to help paint the picture of what was happening after the war. So again, it was good times happening after the war. Again, something that I thought I'd like to share with the class. Again, the Cold War, again, this is not in your textbook. This is not quite in your textbook, but again, it definitely helps paint the picture for when we talk about NATO and NORAD. So, like I said, World War II ended 1945. As we move and transition to the 1950s and 60s, it was a period of the Cold War. Okay, this was something known as the Cold War. Not World War III, that did not happen. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it is something known as the Cold War. Okay, a lot of tension, a lot of suspense took place, but nothing really came out about it. It was mainly a political ideology conflict battle between the two superpowers that emerged. It was the United States and the Soviet Union, the USSR, otherwise known as modern day Russia. After World War II, the Soviet Union and their political ideology, communism, expanded into Eastern Europe. The United States had fear that Soviet Union and communism would spread across the globe and take over pretty much everything. The United States, on the other hand, they were more capitalists. Again, they didn't want communism to influence everyone else. So again, that's why a lot of heads were bumping back and forth between the United States and the Soviet Union. Why was it so much fear that was happening? Well, a lot of atomic bombs and nuclear weapons were accumulated and created during this time period. Again, everyone wanted to try to have the upper hand in terms of what weapons that they have. Again, a lot of high level military and army was still maintained after the Second World War. Again, this still created a lot of fear in the public eye. People built bomb shelters in the backyard just in case something would happen. People were practicing in schools in like lockdown mode just in case something would happen. And it even expanded into space and satellites and all that. So again, it was a big deal during this time period. In 1961, the Berlin Wall was created to divide Eastern and Western Europe. Again, to kind of stop that influence of communism spreading. While Canada was known as the middle power, we were not a superpower that emerged. We were just known as a middle power. But the two superpowers that emerged were the Soviet Union and the United States during this time period. Again, for all those who are not familiar with communism, why everyone feared communism, communism sounds absolutely fantastic and great on paper, but in reality, it didn't work. Again, communism is the political ideology of economic equality through elimination of private property, economic and social reform. Properties and resources were owned by the state in society. So basically, people and the individual didn't own anything. There were no individualism and common ownership of the land, like I said, by the people was owned by the state. So pretty much the state, the government controlled everything. People couldn't have ownership of anything. It was all based on the means of production, controlled by the state. So again, people were working hard over a clock, over time, but all that hard work went back towards the state. So pretty much all the rich had to work hard, but the poor were still equal to the rich. So again, that's where that conflict rise, where some people didn't really have to work as hard, but still maintain that equality that everyone else has. Some didn't like that, some thought it was unfair. Hence why communism eventually fell and did not work. Capitalism, on the other hand, is more like a private business. People own all the factories and all the means of production. So anyway, the opposite. So people will have more freedom and ownership in terms of what they can do, in terms of their businesses and ownership. But moving along and reflecting back to looking at the Holocaust. Again, the Holocaust was a mass genocide of trying to eliminate all the Jewish population during the Second World War by Hitler and the Nazi Party and by the Germans. As we witness this mass killing, mass murder, and genocide of the Holocaust, we realize that something needs to be done. Something needs to be done so that something like the Holocaust will not ever happen again. So something needs to change. We need to recognize, protect human rights as individuals, as human beings. Something needs to be done. So changes to the laws need to change and reflect that. We'll get more into that very, very shortly. But again, the 50s and 60s, it brought back peace and prosperity, a period of optimism, determining Canada's identity. Again, a lot of changes happened within these 2 decades, the 50s and the 60s. A lot more in the 60s, I would say in the 50s, but again, it's a period of change happening, change towards our identity. So the Bill of Rights, again, let's put a little, what do you want, a little star beside it. Put a little happy face over here to recognize that it is important. Okay. I even have a highlighting button somewhere. Let's try to find that highlighter. Highlighter, yellow. Let's highlight this yellow and emphasize that this is important. Let's put it in blue as well. Why not? Let's all make it colorful and pretty. So again, so that this is important, that you'll see this again on your assignment. So, Canada's Prime Minister John Diefenbaker adopted something known as the Bill of Rights in 1958. This came about in 1958. The Bill of Rights was the first step in the right direction in terms of recognizing human rights and protecting human rights. So what was the Bill of Rights? It was simply just a law and had no other power than any other laws. It did not recognize any official languages. The Bill of Rights was not a part of the Constitution. However, it did speak upon fundamental freedom, legal rights, equality before the law, which is all great. It's not perfect, but it was the first step in recognizing these fundamental freedoms. However, with the Bill of Rights in play, if a law was discriminatory, the Bill of Rights was not helpful. And the Bill of Rights was only applied to federal laws, not provincial laws. So again, even though we wanted to recognize, protect human rights, the Bill of Rights was a great thing and it was in the right step, but something more needed to happen. Again, this is on page 16 in your textbook. Okay, something needed to happen. It was not a part of the Constitution. It was in the right step, but something else needed to be done. So fast forward to a couple decades and years later, in 1982, we have something known as the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, otherwise known as the Canadian Constitution. Again, let's put a little star beside this. Sure, we'll add another happy face to it to indicate that it's important. And once again, we'll highlight it. What do you have here? Creative pen. Let's see what that does. So let's put all these stars, underline it or and around it to indicate that it is important. Why? Because you'll see it again on your next assignment. And again, this is all on page 16. Again, hopefully by myself emphasizing and highlighting these key points, it should help you in terms of answering your questions on the assignment. Hence why I am doing it, and it is fun as well in class. So what was the Canadian Constitution? What was the Bill of Rights? What was the Charter of Rights and Freedom in 1982? Well, the Charter, which I'm going to refer to, again, it was entrenched into our Constitution, which is a big deal. With this entrenched into our Constitution, we are now allowed to make our own rules and changes without permission from Britain. Pretty much the Charter is a step forward as it evolved from the Bill of Rights. There are now legal rights protected for everyone, okay, everyone. The Charter is the supreme law of Canada. Nothing is above this law. It improved our ability as Canadians to participate in society, and it provides protection against minorities and unfair treatment. Again, this Charter, Bill of Rights and Freedom, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it applies to everyone as no one is above the law. So what actually does the Charter talk about? Well, along as we're all Canadian citizen in a way, we all have fundamental freedoms. Okay, you have it, I have it. Okay, we now have the right for consciousness, right to have practice different religions, thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. That's section 2 of the Charter. We also have democratic rights as well. We have the right to vote in our elections, vote for our government that we want. We also have mobility rights, where we're allowed to enter and remain in Canada and within provinces, so now we can move around to different communities and cities. We have legal rights, the right to have life, liberty, and security of a person. So again, we cannot be arrested or detained without reasonable cause or evidence. And most importantly, we now have equality rights, section 15 of the Charter. Equal protection and equal benefits with no discrimination. Okay, that could be on race, gender, ethnicity, mental or physical disability. Okay, all have equal rights. So again, we all have this under the Charter. It's embedded into the Constitution. We now have all these rights. So again, I just have a little picture of Prime Minister Pierre-Elliott Trudeau and our Queen Elizabeth II signing off on the Charter, making sure that now Canada has its own constitution. We now have the right to do whatever we want away from Britain, even though we still recognize the British Empire, but we now have permission to change laws as we want to. Again, section 35 of the Charter, again, I always point this out every time we have a new term. Again, section 35 is important because it recognizes First Nations, Aboriginal, Indigenous people as well, and have these rights that all Canadians have. Okay, so again, section 35, subsection 1, subsection 2, Aboriginal people of Canada includes Indian, Inuit, Métis peoples of Canada. Again, this is the first time ever that it recognized Aboriginal people, and now they also have constitutional protection as well. So again, great strides, great movement, great progress. Again, great to see that everyone, even First Nations, have these constitutional protections and rights as well. Again, you see how the charter is so uh, powerful in a way. It's our constitution. No one's above it. Everyone, even the government, all have to follow what's in the charter. So again, if your rights as a citizen, as a human being, is violated and is outlined in the charter, you can bring it up, you can point it out and be like, hey, my legal rights is being violated or being infringed upon. You cannot do that. Okay, so again, very, very significant to know our rights outlined in the charter. But I want to talk about a little bit about equality and equity. Okay, equality and equity. This is something that's absolutely big and something that's emphasized in classrooms today. I know we're at distance education. I don't have a physical classroom. I know I'm not seeing you live right now. You're not in front of me. You're not sitting at a desk. But this is absolutely big in terms of what's going on today in classroom. So we often use the word equality. I use that word a lot. I try to emphasize it. It's important, but equality simply means the word sameness. Okay, what's the same, being treated the same, and equity means fairness or fair. In other words, we cannot have equality without equity coming first. Okay, again, equality is all about sameness. What's fair, what's justice, giving everyone the same thing. But equality only works if we start from the same place. We all know that that is not true. We all have different backgrounds, different barriers and challenges that we all have to come. So we're all not that same. Whereas equity is more about fairness, making sure people have the same access to the same opportunities. So, for example, education, basic necessity of life, clean water, clothing, a roof overhead. That's all about fairness. Okay, we all have differences. We all have different historical barriers that was created based on social economic factors. We all have different ethnicities, different gender, and even different learning style. Okay, so again, I try to accommodate all that as much as possible. Again, we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. Again, no one's perfect, but again, it's important to have fairness before we can have sameness. In a classroom nowadays, it talks about diversity, it talks about inclusion, okay, whether it's special education or not. Okay, we want to make sure everyone is treated the same, have the same access to learning, same access to other resources, and treated the same. Okay, we're all the same. So again, something that I really want to highlight. It's really emphasized in schools nowadays, but again, inclusion, collaborating together, working together. We're all a part about this learning community. So again, all this, again, it relates to what's outlined in the Charter of Rights and Freedom. All right, so as we transition away from legal rights, the Bill of Rights, and the Charter, we're going to more now look at defenses or defense organizations. So a new international era. After World War II, Canada entered a period of more desire to participate in warfare. Canada became a quick major player on the world stage. So again, everyone knew who Canada was, what our impact was during both wars. So again, we started to become more involved, and as we grow as a nations and grow our identity as well. So we're going to talk about not one, not two, but three different organizations. Again, one, two, three. We'll talk about the UN, United Nations. We'll talk about NATO, and we'll talk about NORAD. Again, going back towards your textbook. Again, we talked about the Bill of Rights. Boom, she's done. Charter, done. But now we're going to talk about UN, and we'll scroll down a little bit, and we'll talk about NATO and NORAD. Okay. Again, on page 17 and 16 in your textbook. Again, this is also in your workbook. Again, note how we talked about the Bill of Rights, the Charter. Now we'll talk about the UN, NATO, and NORAD. The UN. What the UN? What do you know about the UN, class? Any thoughts, questions, comments? Anything? Do you know anything about the UN? Well, the UN was created by a whole whack of different countries, not just one, not just two, but so many countries. It has different divisions within it. It has a central body known as the Security Council, where they have the right to veto or block any decisions by the UN. So again, it's very organized and very structured organization known as the UN. It really expanded from the League of Nations, as the League of Nations is not really successful, but it still carry out the same purpose and the same goals. Goal number 1 was to prevent any future war. World War II ended, World War I ended. Again, we want to maintain international peace and security around the world. So that's one of the parts and goals of the UN. So again, let's see what we have here. Let's highlight it. Let's highlight it. That is important. It also wanted to improve quality of life and promote world peace. So again, making sure everyone's rights are protected and have world peace. We also want to protect and respect for basic human rights. And we want to work together in a collaborative, collective effort to solve issues based on economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian efforts as well. So again, ideally to sum things up, just working together with other countries around the world to have peace, to have protection. If something comes up, we'll solve it. Let's not get angry. Let's use our words, okay? And we'll try to solve things so that we can have world peace and security. So that's the main goal of the UN, of the United Nations. That's the whole purpose of it. Yes, Canada is a part of the UN. Okay, we're a part of this team. We're involved as well, just like many other countries as well. But here in Canada, we have a more specific rule. Okay, we're not part of the Security Council. We cannot veto or block any decision made. But our main goals were to have peacekeeping. Okay, something that we can be very proud of as peacekeeping or peacekeepers, where we serve and uphold to protect and prevent wars. So if there's a conflict that goes on, such as a natural disaster, such as the Suez crisis, we would go to that country. We would try to prevent any conflict, and we'll try to help them solve any disputes that they have. Okay, we're known to be as peacekeepers. So again, we send troops, we send aids, we send medical supplies, foods. We do whatever we can to help solve their issues, as this is our role as peacekeepers. Again, it's something that we can be very, very proud of within our role in the UN. So again, note what the UN is all about. Again, its purpose and its goals, and note what Canada's role is in the UN. Again, so now the UN is now done. Two more things to talk about, NATO and NORAD for today. So NATO stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That is a terrible crayon, so we're going to go back to our highlighter and highlight it. NATO, 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Again, notice name, what it stands for. Again, NATO, NATO, it's just a little acronym short form that we use, but no, it stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The purpose and goal of NATO is pretty straightforward. It's pretty made up of different countries, such as Canada, United States, and any other European countries. So anyone who is a part of NATO, if we are under attack, other countries within NATO has to come aid and support. So the goal was to have protection, provision, and preparation. Again, this was the period of the Cold War. We don't know what the Soviet Union were up to. We had fear of the communist ideology spreading, but pretty much NATO is made up of Christian and democratic countries from the Western Hemisphere and Western nations and Western countries in Europe. This was the first time Canada signed a military treaty. So again, I just want to highlight the purpose of NATO. Okay, so if we're under attack or any other countries in NATO are attacked, other countries have to come and aid. On my next slide right here, I have a little map of the world. Any countries that's highlighted in blue, as you can see here, are a part of NATO. So you can see that we have Canada, we are a part of it. We have the United States. Again, we have the UK, Britain, we have France, you have all of the major European countries, basically on the Western Hemisphere. Germany, again, all those countries as well. Denmark, Norway, Poland, Czech Republic. Again, all these countries are part of NATO. So, if any of our friends that are highlighted in blue are under attack, we have to come and help out and support them, because they have our back, we have their back. So again, this is a part of NATO. Well, since NATO was created, the Soviet Union, the USSR, they responded. Okay, they responded in the same way, but creating their own little groupie. Okay, they were known as the Warsaw Pact. Okay, same thing, same goals, same purpose, but the Warsaw Pact made up of Eastern European countries. Again, note that anything that's in red. Okay, whatever is in red. So we got modern day Russia. We have all their Eastern countries. Okay, they're all a part of the Warsaw Pact. Again, nothing really came out of it. We still have NATO today. We have this purpose within NATO today still, but again, the Soviet Union responded with having their own little group known as the Warsaw Pact. So NORAD was basically came about in 1958. Again, it is the North American Aerospace Defense Command. Okay, it only consists of Canada and the United States. Again, NORAD, NORAD, stands for North American Aerospace Defense Command. Again, we had this fear that, again, the Soviet Union would send a missile bomb our way in North America, so we had fear. We had this relationship with our neighbor United States, where we were create radar lines within Canada, but it was mainly the purpose of monitoring man-made objects. It could be a missile or whatnot, or a bomb coming our way. We will use these radar lines to warn us, to provide a warning sign against any plane or missile bomb coming our way. So again, it could happen. We don't know back then. Again, it had a lot of fear. But the purpose of NORAD, again, was more about American influence on Canada's sovereignty. Again, in the end, it was very successful, but basically, the United States pretty much paid for everything. They just wanted to have access and control in our own territories to build these lines. I do have a picture right here. So again, note these lines. We have the Pine Tree line right here. We have the Mid-Canada line and had the Dew line. Okay. The Soviet Union, Russia, well, they were right over here. Okay. If you extend our map, it looks something like this. Again, they can send any bombs our way pretty quickly if they wanted to. Those that had a base in Cuba, again, with, Castro and all those things again. So again, a lot of fear going on at this time period. So hence why we have these three main radar line systems to detect and to provide any warning system if something was coming our way. And if it was, we would know it. We would destroy it before it caused any casualties. So that's the purpose of NORAD. We can always go more in depth about it, but again, it's all about American influence in our land. Again, note how these lines, the Pine Tree radar line, the Mid-Canada line, and the Dew line are all in Canada. Again, mainly controlled by the United States. They pay for it. The only thing is that it is in our land. So again, it could be very controversial as well. So as we wrap things up for tonight and today, again, the Cold War continued until the 1990s, okay? When Gorbachev and the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1991. So again, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So again, long period of time with this fear, tension, United States, Soviet Union, back and forth for all those years. Again, the 50s, again, it was a period of excitement, good times, a booming time. Hence, we have the baby boom, okay? A lot of our parents, grandparents fall on this period where a lot of babies were being born, about 4 million from the 1950s and into the early 60s, which is a lot. Again, Canadians were excited, they were happy, they came back from overseas, they want to see their family again, that which they haven't seen in a long time. And since it was a good time in our industry, the baby boom happened. So again, baby boom, a lot of birth came out. Again, about 4 million within the 1950s and into the early 60s. So again, just a little more knowledge about what was going on in the 50s. So that's pretty much what I had in store for today. So now you can always go back to your textbook. Again, NATO right here, NORAD, again, UN, and up there was the charter. So again, you can always go back to your workbook questions. And now you can answer these questions. Again, we already went over these questions at the start. Again, assignment number 6, 9 marks. Do your best, try your best. Again, show me that you have these understandings. Show me that you can write in full complete sentences. Again, what actually counts is your final test mark. Again, you can get, for example, not the greatest mark on all of your assignments, but if you can do well on your tests, again, that test mark actually is what counts. It goes on your transcript. So again, don't overstress these assignment questions, but you still have to do them before you can do the test. So again, just keep that in mind. Okay. So again, work on these questions. Do as much as you can. Try your best. If you're stuck, need help, again, let me know. I'm here to help. Next week, sorry, not next week, but next class on Thursday. This week is definitely not over yet. We just started this week. We'll look at lesson number 3 starting next class, and a little bit more about it next week. But lesson number 3, we'll look at the 60 until present modern day. We'll look at the Quiet Revolution, and we'll look at more about free trade and more about the Canada Constitution. So that's what we have in store for next class and a little bit into next week. I'll stop it here for today. You keep working on your assignments, and I'll see everyone back here on Thursday at our normal time slot. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your night. Bye, everyone.